So when I started at Wells, I was given a folder by one of my retiring colleagues that had a bunch of just old photographs that had to do with the chemistry department. Last fall, when I was asked to do a brief presentation for a faculty club on the Wells 150th anniversary and to talk about the sciences, I decided I wanted to get this out and actually show some of these pictures to people. That was like a 15-minute presentation, and I was asked to do this presentation. I thought it probably should be a little bit more than 15 minutes, and so I, like Dan, you saw last presentation, he spent time in the archives, and I did too, looking through some of their photographs, and I uncovered some wonderful pictures that I want to share with you and sort of bring you through sort of the history of the sciences at Wells. And so there are pictures from my chemistry collection, pictures from the archives, and then pictures that I've taken over the years, particularly of this building. When I was going through my pictures, I came to this one. I thought I'd start with this, in part because there are 3 Wells College buildings there, and something they all have in common is they're no longer being used to the intent they were constructed. Back there is what building? Cleveland. And what was it originally? It was a library, good. You did your reading, good. This one is Zabriskie, originally science building, and was a science building forever before this building. It's now other things we'll talk about. And then that building, Morgan. What was it? Music and the sciences. I surprised Arthur. We're ahead of the game here. Yeah. And for years I thought Zabriskie was the original science building, but once I found out that Morgan was, it made total sense. There's a greenhouse. So let's start our tour of the science facilities. We'll go back to Morgan. Originally built in 1879. You mentioned some of the original uses. Natural, physical sciences, music, art. There's also a gymnasium in there. And I have met alums who can remember when there were pianos on the first floor. And if you when you go over 1 o'clock for your tour of the Book Arts Center, notice that the doors on that floor are particularly wide, and that was because they needed to get the pianos in and out. Okay. Now, does this look like the Morgan we all know and love today? In 1925, there was a fire. And if you've read Jane Marsh Dykeman's book, describes it as within like a week or so, there was a total eclipse of the sun, a blizzard, an earthquake, and then Morgan burnt. Right. So this is what Morgan originally looked like before the fire, and this is how I've always known it. And I just took these pictures this past week, and I was surprised. You look at the diamonds there, the medallions, you can actually see where they were in this picture. Oh, I've walked by that building for 30-some years, and this is the first time I've noticed that. Also notice there were no windows on the second floor originally. All right. Notice the whole roof line was different after the fire than before. I had never noticed, I had never known, there was a skylight. There's a photograph from turn of that century of art students. Have their easels, or maybe a still life they're painting. I'm going to be surprised if it was there. Yeah. The tower here, much larger, there's now a door into the tower there. So, let's look inside. Okay? I hope no one recognizes themselves here. This was actually one of the photographs that was in the folder I received. This is one of my predecessors, Jasper Freely. The caption on the back of the photograph says, the chemistry class, top floor, Morgan Hall, 1882, 1883. I think it might be a couple years later. I'm not sure he actually had started here in 82, but we can go back and check. Can you imagine doing Gen Chem Lab wearing these heavy black dresses? Notice here, they have evaporating dishes. So this is probably during the winter, the heater's on. And I just want to point out, we still have them. Right? What you'll see through this talk is we never throw anything away. So this is certainly in the 1880s. In the early 1890s, there was a renovation of one of the spaces, put in a brand new chemistry lab, which I think looks particularly modern. There are fume hoods there. These are actually the same stools that were in the previous picture. Again, we never throw anything away. And at the same time this was constructed, we hired our first specific chemistry teacher, and that was Clara Bliss here, who had done her undergraduate work at Mount Holyoke. At this time, she had a BS. The photograph here is about 25 years later, the earliest one I could find of her. Jasper Freely was teaching all the sciences. This is the first specific subject science professor hired at Wells. Right? Geology lab. Again, still in Morgan. Okay. Again, keeping with the theme of we never throw anything away. That's the exact same skeleton. It's in our A&P lab. We still use it. These are all plaster casts that are, two of them are out in the atrium, one of them's downstairs. This one and this one, when I saw this picture, I went, I've seen those before, and it occurred to me that if you remember outside the bird room in Zabriskie, there was a little anteroom you walked through before you went in. There was a display case there, and those two were in that display case. Pardon? I think they've been donated to the Museum of the Earth down in Ithaca. They're trying to get a complete collection of the Ward casts and things. This picture frustrated me for several weeks. Found it in the archives. So I knew that Morgan had been built in 1878. I knew that Zabriskie had been built in 1906, that the sciences had moved over to Zabriskie at that time. There's a little plaque there. I think this is Helen J. Wood, 1938. Okay. I could not figure out where in Zabriskie this picture had been taken. I had it on my iPad and I was just walking around. The best I could figure out was it looks sort of like where the bird room, right? There's a window out there, there's a window over here. But I could stand in the bird room, look around, but no, it didn't fit. You may not be able to see it in the projection, but in the original, I noticed outside this window, you can barely make out the outline of another window of a building a bit away. And if you've been in Zabriskie and you look out the ends, there are no buildings there. So I started walking around campus. And I realized that was a window from Maine. And so I started walking around Morgan. And I found a room that was locked, and I asked security to let me in, and they did. Is that cool? Yeah. So that's up on the second floor. In the original picture, there are these hiding electrical lines, which are no longer there, but if you look closely at the wall, you can see where the paint built up. So this is that space. Yeah. Oh, I was jumping for joy. I figured this out. Yeah. And then I found out the reason. So this is a biology lab. It's in Morgan. It's certainly after 1938. Turns out that biology stayed in Morgan and didn't move to Zabriskie until Zabriskie was renovated in 1958, 59. You should have told me. So let's get to Zabriskie. Found an article from New York Observer, July 1905 here. There was a new president about this time who was doing a lot of building. And one of the things that was being built that year was Smith Hall. At the same time, Zabriskie Hall was being constructed. Zabriskie was originally intended for physics in the basement, the first floor. Chemistry had the second floor and part of the third floor, and then geology had the rest of the third floor. The cost was a grand $75,000. Right. It was a gift of Nicholas Lansing and Louise Morgan Zabriskie. Then again, in 1958, we brought biology over there to Zabriskie after that renovation. I'll also point out that in this article, there's a mention of Clara Bliss. This is a photograph of the dedication ceremony for Zabriskie Hall in 1906. There's our guy, Jasper Freely, we saw earlier. And I believe this is President Ward. Jasper Freely had actually been an interim president between 1900 and 1904. And there's Clara Bliss again. Okay, so now let's take a walking tour of Zabriskie. We'll start in the basement. Professor Colmer, very good. So that's Candace Colmer. Probably the first year she was teaching at Wells. Yeah. And I think that's Christy Crispill, that's Kathy Molkenberg. Anyone know what this space is now? It's a computer lab. So after we moved here, Zabriskie was renovated again for new uses. And so right now, and that is that wall right there. I have another picture of this lab earlier looking the other way. Okay. So this is about 1966. Anyone recognize themselves? Or?
I recognize the classmate.
Okay. Who do you recognize?
Bobby German on the left with the hairbands.
Okay. So Barb Dennison, Jane Talbot, Shirley Anderson, Lynn Hooper, Barb Giles, Catherine Bolster, Dory Mendenhall, Sharon Schultz, Pat Siebold. What it says on the back of the photograph. Now, what caught my eye in this picture, I did not know, this is before I was teaching here, was the picture in the back. I went, I've seen that before, and I know it's somewhere in this building. And I went around to all the labs, and I couldn't find it. And it turned out it was in Professor Elliott's office, and there it is. And so it's a picture of Louis Pasteur. You know? This is the lab next door. I don't know anything about Krzyzewski. Does anyone know anything about him? Gillespie? Okay. Okay. Okay, I remember this as Tom Vaughter's lab, because he was at Wells from '78 to just a few years ago. Notice those skeletons? They're the same ones that are in that picture in Morgan. Right? This is now a PC lab down the basement of Zabriskie. I love this picture. I have no idea who it is or even when, but it just says studious to me. Right? This is what that space looks like now. Right? And the stairwell up here leads to the greenhouse. And that's Barbara Byrne.
Eileen Murphy, 78 to the left.
This is Eileen.
Yes.
Oh.
Dr. Eileen Murphy.
Okay. Come up and tell me that after, because I want to. There's nothing on the picture that says that, so I'd like to know. And Professor Byrne was here, and then Professor Colmer took over after she and her husband were. Bruce was also a biologist here. Move up to the second floor. A more modern picture, but about 2004. This is Rachel Downing. Give you an idea, this space is now the seating area for the grind. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So yeah. This room is why we designed this room the way we did. Yeah, these are all those fold over, and heaven help you if you're left-handed, right? There were more seats in that small space than there are in this room. Laura Arpe is her name. This is now the DeWitt Lecture Hall over in Zabriskie. When they renovated, they took this as a model, and now they're larger seats, so you can walk around, you can work with others. In the past, you were expected to come in and lecture and go home, and students write down. We're much more into active learning now, and so these spaces work much better for the way we teach today. There's a McMullen Biology Prize that we give to the senior with the best grades in biology. I was able to find a picture of Professor McMullen here. When I was walking around Morgan, I was showing all my pictures to the book arts staff over there, and Rich said, "Oh, I have that," and took me up to his office. Yeah. Yeah. So when you're walking in towards the Bird's room, in that little ante room, there was this painting, sort of scaring you to keep walking and go in, right? What we found is it was painted by a student, Laurie Zakari, about 1972. Apparently she didn't graduate. This is her legacy at Wells. And we had no idea. Well, I had no idea who it was, but I was walking in and talking to one of my colleagues, and she had some photographs of some former biology professors, and it was Ida Revley, right? Yeah. And she would have been teaching over in Morgan, right? And I was going through some old yearbooks, and I found a photograph of her from the 1918 yearbook. Right? Tom Vaughter has pointed out that the painting's actually incorrect. I should point out, Revley was known for getting up very early and taking people out on bird walks. Well, this cardinal wasn't native to this area at the time that she was around, so there's an anachronism there. Paul Guerre physics professor from the 20s to the 50s. And this one, again, took me a little while to figure out where it was. And then I remembered that before the 1958 renovation, physics was in the basement and the first floor of Zabriskie. Later, they were up on the second and third floor. This is what would become a biology lab. If you're sort of walking, if you come in from the back and turn over the right, it's now where the bookstore is. And how I figured that out was if you look out here, you actually see cars. There was the parking lot. Actually, right where we're sitting, there was a parking lot. Right? We're now up on the second floor. This was the Gen Chem lab that some of you remember. But this is certainly before the 1958 renovation, right? And since the more recent renovation, this is part of the business center. You can see the arched doorway here. There's a wall here, and now there are offices back there. For those of you who grew up in Zabriskie, you'll remember this as the Gen Chem lab, all right? And I'll point out all the plumbing here was about at this height, right? And I know this is taken before I started teaching because when I was teaching, I had to bring a desk in here, Stephanie remembers, and if I had to talk to the class, I had to stand on the desk. Otherwise, I was talking, to that. Right? And it's also why when I designed my lab here, I designed the plumbing so it was down low. Right? This is also now part of the business center. Back here is where the ticker tape is running. There's a classroom here, a little waiting area, and then the offices there in the back. Anyone remember Professor Vanderpool?
Yeah.
Right. He retired before I started, but he lived long enough to see this building. I was very pleased with that. Do you know anyone class of 63 or?
Classmate of mine, who was 65.
Okay.
And Fran. Two of them.
Okay.
Three. And Fran.
This is also taken in what was the Gen Chem lab in Zabriskie. Again, now it's part of a classroom for business. So in about 58, all these three, the grand old men, right, they were all, or at least Jeff and Ted were Swiss, I believe, or German. Sorry, yes. And I have I have two questions, actually. I have no idea who this woman is.
It looks like Mrs. Vanderpool.
Okay. And do you know where this was taken? Yeah. Because it does not look like Zabriskie.
Is that the AER?
No, there was no.
Like right in between the windows facing out to where graduation happens?
That I don't know.
Facing now hangs in Taylor House, or did hang in Taylor House.
Okay.
That is N. Lansing Zabriskie.
Yes. Oh, yes. I know the painting. Yeah.
And it hangs in Taylor House.
Okay.
Windows are big enough.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Young here, as I've had some alums come back and talk about her, and each one separately described her as formidable. Was also a Mount Holyoke grad, was here for quite a few years teaching chemistry. And what's interesting to me is she had purchased a large number of chemical unknowns from a company. So these are prepared samples where the company analyzes them to many, many significant figures, and you can give them to students to analyze. Right? I have her book. I have her samples still. I still use them. This is for a sample where you're testing for soluble sulfate. And what she did was, over time, recorded for each year what student was given that sample, what data they got, their average, and then you have the actual. Okay? So this says this is sample 3. This is sample 3. This is the sample that these students analyzed.
How much do you use of it each year?
This one I haven't used. There are others I use a lot. Had an alum come by a number of years ago, was telling me about her, and I said, "Oh, what was your name then?" And we looked up. We were able to find the samples that she had analyzed and why she got the grade she did. The second floor classroom in Zabriskie, when I started, was also a tiered classroom. Okay, it wasn't until the 90s that it was broken apart into a small little lecture room and a physics lab. And this is just like me after a lecture, lighting up a cigarette and this. And I'll point, this is now part of the Sustainability Center over in Zabriskie. And I had a couple people ask me about this thing. It was a pass-through. There was an office with a sink behind this, and you could prepare samples before class, have them sit there, and then when you were ready to use them, you open it up and you bring them into the class. So, was Mylene Morphy's office. And you can see that door was put in during the more recent renovation. This is what that classroom looked like. Again, it was tiered, very similar to the first floor. What I remember the difference was the first floor was carpeted, and this one wasn't. And this is a physics instructor, about 1946. This space has been renovated several times. In the early 90s, we needed more space for a physics lab. We really didn't need the 2 large lecture spaces, and so this is broken up first into a small classroom and then a lab behind. My early colleague, Linda Schwab. This is still the same bench and the same blackboard, but before they were on the wall behind you. And then now, it's just been renovated again. This is again still part of the Sustainability Center. This door is not that door. There was a wall about right here, so it was a little hallway. So you could get in and go back to this space, which was a physics lab. In fact, this was that physics lab. Some of you will recognize, or maybe not, Professor Heinekamp. Right? This was the other physics lab up on the 3rd floor. These benches are in the physics lab upstairs here. They were brought over, they were taken out, refurnished, and then used again. Right? This is now another large classroom over in Zabriskie. This is my hallway. We're up to the 3rd floor in Zabriskie. My office is right over here looking down. At one point, all these shelves were filled with journals. And so the hall was more narrow and much darker than this. So I had to lighten this photograph several times to get it so you could even see it. And the debris here is because this is about the time we were moving from Zabriskie over here. But over here is a doorway. There was a little dual seminar lecture space. This is Chrissy Clark, class of '93. She's now a dentist in Cortland. I was showing this to some of my first-year students right before they left for the year, and someone went, "Oh, that's Dr. Clark." This is what that space looks like now, the hallway. Much more brightly lit. You can actually see things. There's a window that was put in here so you can see into that classroom. Where Chrissy is here has been renovated into 2 office spaces. So that's Ernie Olson's office now. The organic lab up on the 3rd floor. And I can tell this is before the renovation because there are like the marble tops. This is now part of a classroom. You can see the structure there. Another photograph of the same lab, Professor Marquise, organic chemistry professor. Also, this is part of a large classroom space over there. PChem lab. And this was obviously right after the renovation because the bench tops are nice and clean. And this is what's called the boardroom over there now. Professor Delaney, in the same room, and again to show you we never throw anything out. We still have both. This is about when I was born. And we still have those equipment, or the piece of equipment, we still use them. So, encourage you to donate so we can buy equipment and it'll be here forever, okay? You will have a legacy. This is, yeah. So this is a little, it's now an office, Deb Gagnon's office now. There's a bench there for balances. We used it as an instrument lab. I have no idea whatever happened to Stephanie. Actually, Stephanie's here with us today. Got her PhD, and she's now running the undergraduate lab, the freshman labs, University of New Hampshire. Awesome, yes. Small lab up on the 3rd floor. Picture from the 30s. Picture from the late 80s. Katie graduated in 1990. Went to University of Santa Cruz. Got a PhD and a postdoc there. I'm not sure what she's doing now. Rose went to Texas A&M, and last I heard was working the Research Triangle in North Carolina. No idea. I had brown hair. Our wonderful Zabrats, all of the students who were TAs referred themselves as Zabrats when we were in Zabriskie, and these are 2 of my finest. Sarah and Stephanie one year went through my entire Gen Chem stockroom and cleaned it. Organized everything, put foil over all the caps of the glassware to keep the dust out. And so it made it a lot easier, 2 years after that, when we moved from Zabriskie over here, made things much easier for me because everything was organized. So thank you. Here's a picture of the attic. We won't talk about what this picture really is, but the attic still looks the same as it did then. So, in addition to the buildings, we use the local area as teaching space. Here's a picture of Linda Schwab and Margaret Dieter, at that point now Margaret Flowers, with a bunch of students outside. I can recognize there's Laura, Stephanie Walker, Lisa Jones, Catherine Hayden. And then we also still use the lake quite a bit for classes. So, Zabriskie was as old and smelly and dirty as probably when you were undergrads, when I started here. And about 92, the faculty started meeting and trying to convince administration that we needed a new science building. I mean, it was the point we were sort of embarrassed having admissions walk through, right? And between 92 and 98, we had lots and lots of meetings. We had architects come in. We had a president at that point who said, there's no way in hell you get a new science building. And so all our efforts were to try and fix up Zabriskie. And in the end, there were 3 estimates given to spruce it up and maybe fix the plumbing. It was about $8 million. To bring it up to code, put in an elevator, would have been about $10 million. To add any space, we're talking at least $13 million. And about that time, we got a new president who said, why the hell don't you want a new science building? And so we started over. And we started having what were called charrettes. And Arthur remembers these very well. Beginning 98, and I will say something I'm noticing, Arthur, it was a wonderful process we went through. Very collaborative between the faculty were involved from day one, with the architect and the administration, to the point where I had the architect's phone number, she had mine. If I had an idea, I could call her. And it worked out very well for everything. We started out looking at what sort of spaces we wanted and what size they might be. And then we started looking at what things need to be near one another. And we started looking at what those spaces might look like. So these are 2 potential designs for a big lecture hall. There were several full plans put together. This is one of the first full ones. Give you an idea, let's see, here it'd be if you're walking out of the back of Zabriskie. Here, if you're looking or walking out from the front of Macmillan and around the circle. I'll point out that there was supposed to be what originally was going to be a greenhouse over an entryway. One of the problems with this particular design was I think it was like 4 stories, and if you're up on the top here, you could look over the top of Zabriskie. And so it was massive. I also point out over here with this is a plan for the first floor. That's where the lecture hall you're in now would probably have been over there if we'd gone with this plan. Worked some more. They moved the building back into the hill a little bit. And it was still 4 floors, but it was more proportional to the surrounding buildings. Now, at about this time, we had raised about half the money for the building. But right before this 9/11 happened. And so the fundraising just dried up. And we had several years just with nothing going on, which I think in the end worked to our advantage, because we could then come back fresh, look at things and go, oh, maybe we should do this other. And we all, the fact, remember the day, it was February 7th, 2006, where there was an email from the president saying, we're moving ahead. We had received the bequest from Stratton, and we're doing it. And so the
$12 million.
part,
About
$12 million, right. The faculty all gathered our spoons and went out and we started digging. We want to get this thing moving, right? And at this point, we had the building that we all know and love today. Right? How many remember the parking lot? Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to show you is the construction of this building. It's about a 1.5 year process in about a 1.5 minutes. Okay. And so all these pictures were taken from the top of the stairwell in Zabriskie. I was taking pictures about every week or so, just watching. I'm not going to show all of those, but we'll start here and just give you an idea. I think you're sitting like about right there. Okay? So here we go. Yeah, so this is about where you are right now. This was a neat, it was cement deliverer. It could be on one side of Zabriskie and deliver cement to the other side. No, the posts go up, and less than a month later, there's that. It flew once we started doing the metal. It's also fun if you look through these several times, watching the leaves on the trees in the background. Yeah. This is the first time the faculty were allowed in this building, and we were thrilled. Right? This is back up. It was upstairs, third floor, near the loading dock. Right? Our first time seeing the atrium upstairs. We were there the day they poured the cement for the stairwell out here. I don't think we have our palm prints in it, but. So those of you who knew Professor Vaughter, his office in Zabriskie was in the basement. So almost under the stairwell. The only thing he wanted out of this building was a room with a view. And so this is the first time he got to see what was going to be his new office, up on the third floor, overlooking, the only room here overlooking the lake. Right? It's now, Professor Heinekamp has moved up there since Professor Vaughter has retired, but it was just a wonderful smile out of him. Right? This space, one of the classrooms down the first floor, my Gen Chem laboratory. Right. I saved this for later. The bird room in Zabriskie. We moved all the birds over here in one fell swoop, which we call it the bird room migration. Okay. And so the construction was between March and August of 2006, 2007. It was done on time. I believe it was done on budget or under budget. And in part because we'd spent so much time designing it, that they were able to go out and buy all the materials at one shot. And you buy in bulk, you get nice discounts. Right. These are pictures from the dedication ceremony. The scissors used to cut the ribbon. That, like I said, we save everything here. I do want to point out that's Grace Chang, who is the architect for the building. I want to point out here, just going from design to reality. Right? This atrium was one of the first spaces we talked to the architect about. We wanted some connection between the different floors. Over in Zabriskie, if you were on one floor, you had no idea what was going on anywhere else. So we wanted this space. And they listened and came with a marvelous design. If you notice, wasn't present here, but there is the golden mean. Actually, in the architecture, starting here, and even going up, if you look in the window up there. Right? So we worked with Grace for a number of years. And this is one of my favorite pieces of paper, but it shows how close we were working together. This was almost a penultimate design. And we'd been working with her since '98, this is 2005. And she came to me and said, you know, you don't have enough space. There's a Gen Chem lab here, there's an organic lab upstairs. There's this little area over here near your office that's under the loading dock. We could dig that out, put a little lab in there for you if you want. You want me to do that for you? Yeah, I wanted that. And this is what that space ended up looking like. And so just a quick tour of this building as we're using it. Asked them to put in chalkboards, lots of places, not just the classrooms. This one's in the atrium upstairs. You can come in almost any time and there's a student doing work there, or TAs have had their TA sessions there. You'll come in the morning, there are physics equations or chemical equations or fetal pigs drawn out. So used quite a bit. This is the physics lab, which is directly above us. These are those benches we saw earlier. Biology lab, that's Alex Lodge, who works for Cargill up in Syracuse. Okay, what lab was this? Oh, yeah, there's Colin there. It's a geology lab, and the reason I know is if you look here, it says obsidian, rhyodite, granite. I'm hoping this wasn't time for an exam. This is my Gen Chem lab I'm very proud of. Again, notice the plumbing here, very low. I was able to put in, have the architect put in the benches. They're all facing the same direction, so I can be in front. I can do my pre-lab talk. We have computers, projection, everything we need. And then I can get the students working. And even if I just stand up front, I can make eye contact with all of them for safety. Right? And this is our instrument lab. And actually, this is actually the NMR that I have a picture of Stephanie sitting in front of over in Zabriskie. Right? This is Aaliyah Grandi, who is in her second year of grad school down at Stony Brook and doing X-ray crystallography. So. We've been very successful in the sciences. These are our graduates from this year. Doing lots of great things. Catherine Pryor, who's probably been helping you carry things up the steps. She's getting ready to go down to Baltimore and teach chemistry. Let's see. Amanda, oh, that's Amanda right there, going to the University of Vermont. Biochemistry. Dakari's going to Rochester. So, as always, very successful with our students, and both here and as they move on from here. And that's my talk, and thank you. Any questions? Yes?
What would you have done differently?
Done this building about 1992, or yeah. I mean, are you talking about this building?
Yes.
There's not much. I mean, we got to think about this a lot. Just playing paper, moving things around. I mean, I got to design this space. And the involvement between the architect and the faculty was literally down to where we wanted outlets. We got to choose the furniture that's in the atrium. We got to choose the furniture in here. And I'll point out, this space was designed for cooperative learning. They can sit next to each other and work, but we also bought chairs. So you can have small groups working. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Oh, yeah, now let go. There you go. There. Yeah. I mean, I've been very pleased with the building, and this is a wonderful room to teach in. I love my lab. I do miss my view from Zabriskie. So I was up on the 3rd floor facing the lake. That's about the only thing I miss from Zabriskie. You know. This space does not have a smell. Yes.
Two questions.
Yeah.
One is, did the physical plant, not the staff, but the physical plant, make a impression on potential students who chose to come here and do science? And similarly, did it increase the number of majors?
Yes.
By double?
Oh, at least. We were graduating in Zabriskie, just in the biological chemical sciences, 7, 10 majors a year. We had 18 or 19 biology, chemistry majors, plus another 15 health science majors graduate this year.
Yes.
Yes.
Way
Way more, yes.
There was 8 in 2009.
Okay.
8 of us.
And just to follow up, what was it about this building itself? Or was it your internal enthusiasm for what you were doing? Or what was it that made that difference, do you think? Or does make that difference?
I mean, part of it's just the ambiance. Over in Zabriskie, I mean, the paint was peeling off the walls. They would paint and it would peel. It smelled. It just, the layout here, I think, is much more effective.
Okay.
When we did the open house, and I've done about 10,000 tours of this building.
Yes,
And I, okay. My wife happened to come along, and she was sort of trailing towards the back, and she was talking to a gentleman. He said, "This is a marvelous building." And she said, "Oh yes, I know." He said, "No. I'm an architect. This is a marvelous building." So,
Chris, first, thank you. It's your love of the campus, the college, but mostly your love of our students. We're all very grateful. Could you tell folks about the evolution of the health science major and how that major is doing now?
a little bit. In the past, health sciences, a student would do a major, say in biology or chemistry, take sociology, take all the courses you need to do the MCATs. For a long time, there was a math professor who was in charge of all the pre-med students, because he had gotten his daughter into medical school. So that was his experience. Professor Shalevsky, right? When he retired, it went to the person in the career services, and I helped out for a year. It was like having two jobs, because it takes time to do. The application for med school is much worse than for grad school. You have to get individual letters, you bring them together, a group letter, and two people didn't work. We started getting more and more students who actually were going to medical school. The entire time I've been here, 3/4 of the people taking Gen Chem say they're pre-med. When they get out of my class, it's not that many, but. But we've gotten more and more students who are interested in the health sciences. And so 2-3 years ago, we actually introduced an actual major in the health sciences, which went from no students to 9 graduates last year to 15 this year. There's a group of faculty who have been the health science committee helping students out. And we've just gotten word that we're going to hire a director for health sciences to take some of that burden away from the faculty, let them spend more time actually teaching. But this person will also teach, we have a 100 level class in Introduction to Health Sciences and also a CAPSTEM course in health sciences. But certainly drawing a large number of students, and a large number of students who are actually ending up in the health sciences.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chris, it's early, but do you notice the fact that we now offer a Bachelor of Science as well as a Bachelor of Arts?
Absolutely.
Do we notice that making a difference in admissions?
Yes. Yes. I mean, how many, you say we were?
It was 8 of us. We all had Bachelor of Arts.
Right.
And then 2 of us went to medical school, and then 1 veterinarian,
Mhm.
and then a lot of PhDs, and then
Right.
chiropractor. So we all ended up.
Yeah, I'd say the BS is more important on the admission side,
That's all.
because we've had very successful students forever who have the BA. Yeah. I mean, the school I went to offered, if I was a chemistry major, I could receive the BA or the BS. I had a colleague, he and I had taken the exact same chemistry courses. He opted to take the BA to emphasize his liberal arts background. I took the BS to emphasize the science. And it didn't matter. He went to Berkeley. So. I'll be happy to share more pictures.